Hi, I'm so excited for our talk today, our conversation today. I have with us Anna Mindelöf, who lives, well, I met her in Helsinki, Finland last year when I had the privilege of getting an inside look at her very interesting company, Fiskars, where she is the Chief People Officer. And I chose Fiskars as my company to learn about because I knew about their products, these
Sister. Yeah.
orange coal scissors. But then after, she can tell you a lot more about the other products. But since back there, I have the beautiful alto vase, which
Yeah.
I have pretty flowers, and then the beautiful crystal glass, the
Yes.
beautiful glass glasses.
Yeah.
I'm collecting more of them.
Founded or invented the best year, the year I was born, 1968. So,
Oh, I love them. I always get such compliments, and
yeah.
each is sort of different. The bottoms, they're so. Anyway, this is just a little teeny glimpse into the beautiful world of Fiskars, Wedgwood, Waterford, whole lot. You guys are in 29 countries, have over 7,000 employees, but that's how we met last year, and we've kept in touch. And maybe if you can tell us a little bit about when you joined, maybe what your key priorities were when you came, and then how that's evolved, and maybe a little bit about the culture, and then we can talk some more. Very
Sure.
interested to hear about the company, whatever you'd like to share, and then maybe it's what your role is there and what you've been up to.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Very nice to meet you.
Absolutely.
So, yes, I started to work with Fiskars Group, which is correct. You talked about some of the brands. We have 14 brands. So we usually say that we are a house of brands. Some of the brands more well known in the US than others. I'm based in Sweden, so even though I work in a Finnish company, founded this year 375 years ago, so we have our 375th anniversary this year. Big celebrations ahead, starting in June, July, ending at the end of the year, maybe. And when I started, my tasks was more or less to define what tasks I should focus on. But the information I had in my hands was you need to focus much, much more on talent management, on organizational development, how should we grow people, how should we make sure that we have the right people in our critical positions in the organization. And when we talk about the company, to go back to that, and we are actually you mentioned some few of the brands. If I would mention other brands, it would be our latest acquisition, which is Georg Jensen,
Yeah.
and which is awesome because that means that we now are in jewelry too, not only home and tableware, also jewelry. And the other brands is very Nordic brands. Itala, you mentioned the Autoways that you have in the background there. It's Rörstrand, like local Swedish brand, very famous brand in Sweden. And that's what we do. We have the Wedgwood, we have Royal Dalton and Royal Albert. It depends on our listeners where they're located, how they would perceive the brands now. But then we have Wedgwood and Waterford, to mention a few. We also have our idea on how to grow is to do acquisitions, but we also grow through, of course, through organic growth. That's what we are trying to achieve. It's very nice to be able to buy brands and integrate them in the organization, and by that growing, but also showing that we can grow. Without that is, of course, important. We are stock listed at the stock exchange in Helsinki, in Finland. And as I said, then been existing since 1649. So that comes with heritage, and most of our brands are also plus 100-year-old. So what we do is that we take care of the brands, make sure they survive, and that we actually use the heritage of the brands in how we communicate and how we go to the market. So that's the sort of mission. Of course, that also comes with a responsibility almost when we talk with our employees, when we talk about the company. And you who had the privilege to visit our nice campus in Helsinki, you also saw a lot of the former products that are not in production any longer, but also the current products. What else can I tell you? You said, yeah, we are actually more than 7,000 employees. We are almost 8,000 employees now.
Wow. Oh, growing fast.
Yeah, we have around 500 stores worldwide. Not that many stores in the US yet. Everything is yet. But in plenty of the countries in Asia, we have stores, and in the Nordic countries on top, and also in London. So you see it everywhere. We exist as shopping shops in Harrods in London, in other places too, but then we have our own shops on top.
Yeah, I made sure I spent time in the airport at your
Yeah.
just beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
I knew they were not in the US yet, so I savored my last few minutes at the airport there.
Yeah, and we also have one of those fun brands that I like a lot, and that's the Moomin by Arabia. So for those who listen to this and have never heard about the Moomin family, you should have a look at that. You can also listen to some podcasts about
Yeah,
it.
yeah, I have.
Philosophies. Yeah.
And you just opened a store that has, I think I saw one of your posts about that.
We have
Do you
several
have
now.
several? Okay.
Yeah.
That focus on them, or is
So the most famous product that we have when it comes to Moomin is the Moomin mugs. So there are different mugs with the different characters, but Moomin is much more than only a Moomin mug. It's a lot of different things. So I'm not talking too much about it in this podcast, but go in there and look at Moomin characters, and you will know what I'm speaking about.
great. Yeah, I'll be curious to explore more. Yeah. So, it sounds like you use the word responsibility because that was exactly the word that I was thinking about because there's such a rich heritage in your brands. And then, so with the people philosophies, maybe if you could share a little bit like what your key people philosophies are, and then how much they were aligned with the way Fiskars was already when you joined, and have there been some any key changes or enhancements that you've added since you've joined, or it's been more enhancing what's already there? Maybe if you can tell me a little bit about that. And then if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit, I think you joined after COVID
I
started.
did.
Okay, so you weren't there during the thing, but maybe if you can share a little bit now what do you have a hybrid, maybe a little bit about what the work environment is in the post-COVID world?
Sure. I actually managed to, after I think it was 6 weeks with the company, we had a big leadership summit, and I managed to catch COVID for the first time for me. So I was really ill during 9 weeks, just in the start of my employment of Fiskars. So that's another story, but that's great. I started sort of after everyone was back from COVID, to be honest, into Fiskars. My key people philosophies is I have a few, of course, and it depends a little bit what you mean. So when I'm speaking about the people philosophies and my key philosophies, it's much more personal than maybe what we do on an organizational level. Of course, I'm trying to influence that part too, with me being me. But what I did when I came in was, of course, that I looked at the strategy we have in place for the business, and then I created a matching people strategy. So we made sure that whatever the business wants to see, that's what we try to deliver on.
Mm-hmm.
So we had in that strategy, it's a simple strategy. It consists of 4 pillars, and one of them is about culture and how can we excel when it comes to culture and be that organization that everyone wants to work for, both the ones who are already working for us. We make sure we retain them and grow them and are as attractive for them as we are for external talents. And that's almost always my main focus when I go in, is that I try to retain people and create the best of employer brand for people in the organization. and
Okay.
that we are on now. So we are constantly working with how can we investigate what the people in our organization want, and how can we adjust what we want, what we actually provide people with because they want something.
Hmm.
So changing the culture with listening to the employees in the organization. And that's also one of my key philosophies is listen more than you speak.
Hmm.
And the number one for me is always about trusting people before you know that they can be trusted. So it needs to start somewhere. So why not trust them? So I'm like a child there. I always assume that people come with good intent. And I always say, I'm always trying to trust people like a 6-year-old running into the kindergarten, here I am.
Yeah.
I trust because until they have proven something else. And
Right, right. Yeah, I love that because trust is such key core part of life.
yeah,
And it's interesting because it's sort of like the chicken or the egg, what comes first.
mm,
But if you trust people first, they will become trustworthy because that's
correct.
so you
Yeah,
give people benefit of the doubt, it sounds like.
yes, yes. I'm
Yeah.
trying, and uh, if my direct reports are listening to this, I hope they agree on that's my philosophy and what I'm trying to achieve. But that's the intent, at least. And then also one thing that we are working a lot with, and it's also something that I have sort of installed or crafted in the organization, is that we think it's super important with being inclusive. And
Mhm.
that means that, for instance, when you have meetings, you will always have many of those extroverts who are speaking and speaking and speaking. And then we are not really inviting the ones who are a little bit more quiet. And I'm trying to give that space and take that space for them and invite the quiet people and ask if they want to contribute. Um, and we also in the organization, you can see this not only in my team, that we have what we call an inclusion experience index. And it's based on how we act when we meet people in the organization. And we measure that. So make sure that we sort of not only preach it, we also practice it and measure it.
What are so I like that. The equal I don't know if you've heard of Project Aristotle that Google had, and they talked about psychological safety, and the two components were equal share of conversation taking. So it sounds like you do that. So you said that you invite, if people are quieter, you take the initiative to ask their opinion. Like, so you
I,
actually
yeah,
maybe
I
if you
think,
could share a little bit about how you do that, because it may not be easy,
yeah,
especially if
yeah.
certain people dominate, or is it sort of just the culture? People just know to give other people a voice, or how does that work?
I mean, everything starts with yourself. So it's self-leadership, right? So what I do is that when I have meetings, some people are speaking a little bit too much without adding that much extra to the
Mhm.
conversation. I'm
Yeah.
actually politely tell them that uh, that's really nice. Now we need to give some more room for other people in the room. And then you invite people who are always quiet to speak up, because just because you're quiet doesn't mean that you are not having good opinions or solutions for things. So that's my philosophy, and that's what I'm trying to sort of embrace in the organization. Um, and I think that makes people feel that they are seen. And if
Mhm.
you're seen or recognized, sort of someone understood that I exist and that I can contribute. So it's a lot about recognition and seeing everyone in the room, not only the ones who naturally take the space
Right,
because
right.
they are trained to.
So, so thank you so
Yes,
much for recommending this book. So,
yeah,
what you just said. So, by reading this, certainly depending on what country you're in or where you're from,
yeah,
that would what you just described would be very unusual. For instance, in an Asian country or in China, for instance, because you would be the one expected to sort of take the reins and steer, or what you say, kind of determines what other people think. So can you speak a
Yeah.
little bit about that? Is what your philosophy, do you think um that's in countries around where you live, is that what people embrace there? Maybe if you could tell a little bit about the cultural difference of Sweden, since that's where you're from, but you work in a company that's headquartered in Finland, and then maybe the cultural differences, maybe with U.S. other nationalities, and how you learn from each other, or how you maybe adapt your own way of doing business.
That's a big learning journey for everyone who's listening, I guess. If you haven't read the book Catch a Map, you should. It's a good laugh, at least, because then you realize how you need to use the cultures and your culture background, and you need to relate it to something. So it's always in relation to another country or another culture. So, for instance, it's a good example in the book about if you come from India, you might think that the person from France is very structured, but if you come from Germany, you would say the contrary. And that's very true. As a European, I can confirm. and and of course, some of the cultures are, and the languages and cultures are more quiet cultures, like Japan, for an example. Um, Maybe compared to the US, in the US, you don't need to read that much in between the lines. It explicitly said what you mean. It's a big culture difference between the Nordic countries, even though if you come from other parts of the world, you would probably say that that's the Nordic. So people are probably the same, but it's the same conversation to if you are from the East Coast or West Coast or Midwest in the US. People are different, and
Mhm.
the culture is different. It's more extrovert people in Sweden compared to Finland. In Finland, people are not that talkative at all. If I'm just generalizing, it's heavy generalizing here. But and that's the biggest difference, and also that it's not the culture where you give explicit feedback. So that means that you should have understood. It's not so common that you get feedback directly. And that's a big difference for me. I always worked in or from Sweden, US, Germany, etc. And I never worked in a Finnish organization before. So that's the biggest difference for me, and how you mitigate that.
So how an employee, if they're not getting explicit, it's if they're supposed to read more in between the lines, how do they improve? Do they just learn to read in between the lines? Like how does one adapt to that environment?
Yes, I think we need to have that in our structure. So when we train people, of course, we need to go in and we need to say that. So when you're a manager, you are expected to give feedback to
Okay, okay. So
your
it's not accepted. Okay, yeah.
for feedback, but that's not the natural thing that they are doing. If it
Ah,
was
so you have to fight
good,
against nature. Okay.
we would say, so do you have any feedback to me? And that's naturally. But it's also a lot of things that we will talk about that a little bit later, that the Finnish people, or Finland as a country, is one of the happiest countries in the world. And so they're just more satisfied with how the environment is and how it is. They are not trying to change everything. So it's
Oh,
and I think that's the biggest learning for me, is that it's okay when it is like this, and they sort of align to that. So it's not that much maybe striving as it is in other countries, but
okay. So it's not natural to ask for it because you're already content. Is that what I'm
it's
sensing?
no, I don't know why it's not natural to ask for it. I just think that's what I'm notified. So uh,
Okay.
and when I saw from the beginning, I thought it was only in Fiskars, but then when I talked to other people, I realized that's not the case. So I'm
Okay.
revealing company secrets here about the
Right. So,
Finland.
when you said that one of your key priorities is figuring out to help what people want to learn and grow, what are some of the areas that they're seeking? What are they interested in learning more about and improving?
So one of the first things that I did when I came in was that I looked into data and saw why are people leaving the organization. And
Okay.
everyone who works for us loves our brands. They love the colleagues,
Mhm.
but still some people were leaving. And the reason for that, when we looked into data, was we did a lot of exit interviews. So we had a lot of data on that. And we also measured in exit surveys the reason for leaving. And there you could see that it's because they couldn't see their next natural step,
Okay.
no career path, and there were not that many visible growth opportunities. So that's one of the first things that I did, was that we started to work on, and it's now launched since last September, what we call the growth space. And in the growth space, you find a lot of assessments, 360 feedback tools. You can get a mentor, or you can become a mentor. You can also sign to gigs. So if you want to try out a new position or something that is new for you, you can go in and say, yes, I'm interested in being part of that specific project. And you assign yourself to a small or a bigger gig or project. And that drives that people, of course, they see that others are doing that, and they see that there is an opportunity to learn. So it's well received, and a lot of use of this in the organization.
Oh.
Yeah.
When you assign yourself a gig, is that part-time, or is that something you do on top of your normal job, or it's a change in your whole job?
No, it can be anything, but the ones that we have are smaller. So it's on top of what you do, or inside your 40 hours or whatever hours you are working. So
Oh,
yes, so it's
so
not.
you, yeah,
Yeah,
so you get a chance to try something new without risk, like
yeah,
see if
exactly.
you like it.
Yeah.
Is that sort of a job recrafting? Like, so that you would always do your primary job and then do that on top? Or is it with the intent in mind that you would switch over more to that type of work?
No, not necessarily. You can do it on top, but just for fun and try out, and then you can take a new gig and say, no, I don't want to do that recruiting gig any longer. I want to do that one. So you can try, and it's just to sign, and then the person who is the project lead for it, or actually is the one who installed the gig, is the one who's deciding who is joining and not. So yeah,
Oh, okay. And some people may just do it just to have learn something new and go back to their current. Okay. So it makes their job, or makes the whole situation for them more interesting because they're learning something new. And then maybe it helps them do their main job better because they understand what their people over
colleagues,
there do.
exactly. But we just started this, so we are like 4 months into it.
So
Uh,
do you have people who are in marketing go and do sales and vice versa, and then they can understand like
no, not yet.
okay, okay, yeah,
That would be
yeah,
great.
yeah,
Appreciate.
yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause I have a client that they're thinking about doing more cross training just so they can appreciate each other because usually there's some tension there.
That's more job rotation, right?
Oh,
Uh, so that
oh, okay.
yeah, that's more switching job with someone else, or internal mobility tasks, saying I would like to go to that position for a while. We are not there yet, but we are probably getting there, because it is about creating those growth opportunities everywhere in the organization. So you feel that you the main goal is that people in the organization should feel that at some point I might leave the organization,
Mhm, mhm.
person to be more employable than they were when they came into the company.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
So you
yeah,
have to keep the employability up also.
right. Okay, so you're helping them with that goal. Okay.
Yeah.
Even if they go elsewhere. Okay. What about generational differences, age differences? Have you seen trends? Because I would imagine since the company has been around so long, you might have people who've been there a long time. Or so maybe could you share what attracts different age groups and different challenges different age groups have?
I would not, I would divide it into generations more than age. Maybe that's what you mean. So, since we have so many different professions in the organization, we have glass blowers, we have people who design things, we have retail people on the floor, we have store managers, we have production people in general who is more on the production side. And then, of course, all the different professions you have in any office environment. for the people who have been the longest time with the company, we have great people who have been plus 40 years in their positions. And then it's mainly craftsmen that have been doing this long time with the company, but we also have some office people. For instance, I have my HR director in the UK. She is on her 40th year with the company. And so she has been working her full working life for us, which is amazing. But the difference, I would say, depending on generation, is I don't see any decline amongst people who are plus 60 for taking on new jobs or work or speed or anything. The contrary, I would say, they even are like more onto it. The empty nesters are more onto it than others. I see the biggest difference I can see in the organization is that the younger generations, not the ones maybe between 20 and 30 years old, but a little bit older, they want to work fully remote, some of them, and they don't want to be at the office at all if they can choose. So that's one of the challenges we have with the generations, where people who are grown up in or in the early career, they were in the office environment. They have a tendency to say that I want everyone to go back to the office as much as possible. It's at the office work happens. My philosophy is that work doesn't happen at the office. It happens everywhere. So for us, we have a hybrid work model for most of our positions. So for our office environment, for sure, very different when it's a retail store, of course. But in the office environment, yes. So mainly we say 2 to 3 days per week in the office. And we have changed a little bit under COVID. During COVID, we were like super flexible. And we had like, yes, of course, we can hire people 100% remotely. You don't need to be in a country where we have an office, etc. That doesn't work any longer. So now but we are somewhere in the middle, and saying that yes, we acknowledge that you would like to have a 100% remote contract for this specific position. We can't do that, but still, for some positions, it's possible.
Okay. So, what are certain things that you have done to increase employee engagement because of the hybrid environment? I think I shared with you that article about in Sweden about the coffee ritual, the fika.
Yeah,
So, are there certain things that you've done? Because I've seen your offices are beautiful, and you have different ways. I've seen the little booths and the little rooms where you can bring your dog and all that. Like
yeah,
maybe, so certainly physically, your building is something very beautiful to go to.
yeah,
And that's of course for the office. But I know there's many other workers who go to
yeah.
other places. But what are certain things to encourage? Or right now you have the hybrid, so people choose which day they go in. Are there certain things that you've had to instill and do that are quite different? What things have you done perhaps because of the change in going to
Yeah.
hybrid?
Yes, of course. I mean, in some countries, in some of our locations, people during COVID, they moved far from the office and they don't want to come back. Some of them have left and some of them are still in.
Yeah.
But it's a tricky question. What we have done is different depending on which country we talk about.
Okay.
So it's
Yep.
very locally arranged. In
Yep.
Sweden, we have 2 days per week where we want people to be. So if you are working in the Swedish organization, which I'm not, I'm a global person, I'm still trying to be there 2 days per week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, in order to see each other and have a coffee and have face-to-face meetings, etc. But the last couple of months, it has actually been more people at the office every day per week than I've seen before. So I think we gradually go back a bit.
Oh, okay. So you choose the Tuesday and Thursday. That's the days you want people to be in the office. And
That's for the Sweden office, yes. And in other countries, it's like other days. And some of the offices have like 2 days plus one. So it's Monday and Wednesday, and then it's one third day, and you can pick one day, whatever day work day you want to be in. Uh,
Okay.
it's also important to acknowledge that a lot of teams, at least in Fiskars, is fully remote. So it will also mean that you will need to be in Teams calls, etc., even though you are at the office, and that takes conference room space,
Right.
etc. So it's tricky when it's not everyone is at the office at the same time. Then you still end up in calls like this where you sit remotely, right? Um,
Right.
so and this is the same struggle in all companies. It's
Right.
not
Right.
unique. You have heard this several times from others. I think it's the biggest difference I see now compared to a couple of years back in time is um, some of the bigger companies in the US, but also in other countries, they have sort of mandated that people should go back to the office many days per week. Uh, and that's very unfortunate, I would
Right.
say, because you will not be a talent magnet at all. And
Right.
that's one of the things, right? How can we be attractive? How can we help people to grow? What's best for you? Is it best for your work-life balance to be able to work from home a couple of days per week? It's a huge difference. I was listening to, overhearing more conversation with two younger mothers, and they it's so much more flexible now compared to some years back in time. And I had kids, mine are grown-ups. I had to work between 8 and 5, 5 days per week at the office, and that's super stressful. So whatever you can do in order to be more flexible, you will also be able to attract more females and more parents, I would say.
Right.
It's not females. In the Nordic countries, we are used to that anyone can take parental leave.
Why have more people been showing up beyond the 3 days, do you think? You said more people are
Mm.
showing up in the office?
Different reasons. Nice to meet some people, nice to sit somewhere else than in the small apartment or where they now are living. Um, we have in some of the what we're trying to do is that we also recruit from we move people around a little bit in the organizations. I moved people from Germany to Copenhagen, from Sweden to Finland for a short while. And then it's natural that you're at the office because you don't have any other place where you meet people. So that's one reason. But I don't have a clear understanding on why people are getting back. It's just what we do. And we have done plenty of engagement activities like come and have coffee, come and have a muffin, and so forth. And engagement activities in general are helping if it's
Yeah.
on site.
So certainly relationships and connection are such an important part of wellness. And I know that one of the things of many things we connected on was our interest in the study of happiness and positive psychology. So certainly having like a best friend at work or, really engaging with people that helps with wellness. Um, so I hope that that's helping in those situations. Tell me a little bit about how you became interested in the study of happiness, and you even had, I think, your own business for a while, and then how it must impact your work as a chief people officer. Can you share with us a little bit about that?
Yeah. um, so from the beginning, it was not so much about happiness. It was more about focusing on strengths instead of focusing on development opportunities. When you have your manager who is saying, I have some stuff I need to talk to you about. Here's
Mhm.
3 things that you are good at. And then you're sitting there and you wait for the fourth part, which is the only thing that you will remember from that call. So what I wanted to understand is how can we be more in our strengths to
Mm,
become and to be high performing, etc.
okay. Okay.
Um, so that's how that part started, I think. And then I was consuming a lot of TED.com talks, and I listened to Sean Anker about the happiness trap, um,
Mm,
and he had so many good points in there. So that made me read more and investigate more. How can we do this, and how can we bring this to people in the organization? And sometimes I'm pretty mean when people are I don't know if it's mean or if it's helpful, but I think you need to work a lot on being unhappy It's as much
Mhm.
effort to work on being happy as it is to work on being
Right.
happy.
Yes, yes.
So
To understand and be in touch with your negative emotions.
yeah,
Yep.
and so that's also sometimes how I approach it. That that's my approach. And then when I was working almost 10 years within Adidas Group, and when I left Adidas Germany, so I was based in Germany for a little bit more than a year, and then I left and I sort of changed my title. After resigning, I was still staying for a couple of weeks, and I changed my title to Chief Happiness Officer. And
Oh,
and no, not that many people reacted on it, but it was pretty fun because you of course get reactions. And that's how I sort of started to talk about, so what should I do now? What is the company? What is it that I should work with? And I was living abroad for a while, coming home to Sweden. I wanted to meet a lot of people. And I started this networking event, which I called the Happy People Networking Event. And I invited a lot of people to just share thoughts about happiness in general. So that's how that part started. And then I have continued investigating that. How come some people are always happy, always seems to be happy, and some people are almost never happy? So that has been sort of, I don't know how to say that in English. It's like two different corners.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah. What have you
and
discovered in
so I
your
think
research?
for me, it's an attitude. It's an attitude of uh, I choose to be positive. I choose to come with positive intent.
Hmm.
But that doesn't mean that I can't be sad or
Right,
unhappy with things. It's just
right.
that the general state of mind is I'm happy. So that's my approach to life more than
Yeah.
anything else. And pretty soon after I founded that company that I sort of wrote about, I actually got a new position and I started to work for Ericsson. And I used a lot of what I learned in
Uh-huh.
my position as head of talent management in Ericsson. Um, yeah, so that's sort of the background. I don't know if that answered the questions, but
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so you were interested in those who are happy and those who seemed unhappy, and so you realize it's an attitude, but if you're happy, that it's very important to also be aware of your your unhappy emotions, your negative
maybe
emotions.
yes. I'm more like it's okay to not always be happy.
Right. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like when I ask people in my team, "How are you?" And if you measure on a scale from 0 to 10, how are you today? And then someone is saying 2, then that's okay.
Right. Okay.
So you sort of can confirm that generally we are happy, and generally we think life is good. But we have our days when we are not feeling that good because some things disturb us or something is not good in our life at the moment, and that's okay.
Right. So, the World Happiness Report, which actually is a kind of funny name because the question asked, there's only one question asked, and that's the Control's ladder question. It actually doesn't use the word happiness. Instead, it talks about the 1 to 10, the ladder, like where
Yes.
you are. What are your thoughts there since you live in Sweden, but your company's headquartered in Finland, and so you're around a lot of Finnish people,
Yeah.
which Finland's been ranked now, I think, for the 7th year in a row as the happiest country in the world. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts there?
Um,
The
my
report, maybe overall the findings.
yeah, I agree. I don't think the report maybe measure happiness in the sense that probably most people relate to happiness,
Right.
but it relates to that everything is okay, that you have a good life, and that you can feel that you have a good life. And I think the Finns are very much like that. I would not say that they are content because that would be misusing it, but it's more that they are happy campers. It's okay. Life is okay. And they, even though sometimes life is not okay, they have the attitude that, okay, we will get there again. And it's a persistent culture to and they have the attitude that life is good, and that's nice.
So
That's my
interesting. Yeah, so
conclusion.
interesting. You said that you didn't want to use the word content because you thought that would be a misuse. Can you share a little bit more about what you mean there?
Because content sounds like we don't need to do anything. We are complacent, and that's not what I mean. I just mean
Oh,
that they are happy with what they have. They are proud of being Finns. They protect the Finnish heritage. They are proud uh, citizens of Finland, and that's nice. Uh,
okay. Because
so
you see the negative part of contentment as complacent. Okay.
because they also have a lot of benefits that citizens get if you are living in Finland. So it's a great country to live in from many aspects. So with that said, even though I don't agree on the happiest country in
Yeah.
the world, it's still a really good country.
Mm-hmm. Okay, got
Probably
it.
a really nice country to live in. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that's really helpful to explain because there's content. Content is a big word. It can mean a lot
Yeah.
of things. And so the part that you don't want people to think about is the complacent, like we don't need to do it. You use the words we don't need to do anything because that's not,
Exactly.
that's
No.
correct. Okay. That's very helpful to understand your viewpoint there. That's really good. That's really good. Yeah. Well, we've covered a lot of things. Is there anything that you want to make sure that we maybe you talk a little bit more about, or I know we could talk for a long time.
Yeah. Um,
And maybe you can share if people from the US are listening, how they can learn more about your products too. What
oh,
would be the best way to do
uh,
that?
you can, since I said that we are a house of brands, you can use the fiskarsgroup.com site, and then you will see all the offices and places and exhibition centers and villages that you can visit that is part of Fiskars Group.
Yeah,
Um, if anyone is traveling to Finland during the summer, I would highly recommend you to visit Fiskars Village, which is where everything started there 375 years ago. And that's where you can listen to nice music during the summer. You can visit different shops, and craftsmanship is visible, and you can also try that out. Um, what else about Fiskars Group or our brands? If you live in the UK, you should make a visit to the Barlaston site in Stoke-on-Trent, where Wedgwood is. There you can go. Also, it's more of an exhibition center, so it's a museum there. You can go into our archives and look at products and how they came to life. And you can also go and do some pottery there. So there are a lot of, it's really fun actually. So it's a lot of things there to visit. Also in Ireland, we have Waterford. There is also tours that you can do in order to see how we produce our products
oh
in
wow.
those sites. If you want to buy things, we have plenty of e-commerce sites to visit, but you find everything if you go into the Fiskars Group site.
Right, right. Yeah, I remember when I walked into your, because I just knew these, right? And so I was like,
Yeah,
oh my goodness, I was like in heaven. It was so beautiful. Everything,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, very, very, yeah, I look forward to collecting more of my products. So, so beautifully. And that, yeah, I
yeah.
love looking at that. Makes me happy, like filling that with flowers.
So that's the
Or actually
thing.
just without flowers, it's very beautiful to look at because I think
Yeah,
people just use it without anything in it. Maybe,
yeah.
yeah.
Used for everything. So what I didn't talk about is maybe our vision, which is about pioneering design to make the everyday extraordinary.
Yeah.
And that's also what we try to live. So we talk a lot about being the extra in ordinary.
Oh,
Um, and so that's sort of a little bit of a mantra from my side at the moment. But we also have huge focus on creativity at the moment, and how can we be more creative, not only when we produce products, also in when we lead people, when we grow people, when we design processes, etc.
yeah. So people, when they're happy, they can be the most creative. when there's high levels of well-being. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And you guys have a lot of that going on.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then one more thing that I wanted to add. We talked about happiness from an angle, which country is most happy here. But I would also say if you look into the culture map and you start to look at people, many companies talk about culture fit. I seldom do that. I talk about culture add. So I
Mm.
would like people to feel that you can contribute and you are a talent and we can use your specific skills and your background because who you are and because of your, where you come from, etc. So you really feel that you are someone who contribute and add something instead of just trying to be a person who fits into the culture.
Oh, I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll start saying that instead. Yeah, a fit. Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah, and what does it mean? It means that if we really would like people to be able to be themselves, that's also at work, and that's the intention that you can bring your full version of yourself to work, um, then that's what's needed.
Well, now I know why so many people follow you around to where you are, because I'm sure that if you bring all this to your team and then to all of Fiskars, they're lucky to be with you. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing
Thanks for having me.
about your company and about some of your philosophies. I'm sure that everyone will enjoy learning from you, and I know I did. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me here, Grace. Nice to meet you again, as usual.
Thank you so much.